right, welcome. I am here with my friend Elizabeth Hall. She is a spiritually focused life coach, and we are going to chat all things diet culture, a little coronavirus thrown in there, and see if we can help you all feel a little more at ease in this time of uncertainty. But Elizabeth, why don't you give us a little background on who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So, yes, my name is Elizabeth Hall, and I am a life coach. Um, and I focus on actually intuitive eating and body image issues with mostly women. I'm not opposed to working with men because I know they have the same issues.
Mhm.
Um, but so far, most of my experience has been with women. And so I help them sort of see where they're at in diet culture and break free from some of that paradigm so that they can take that energy. There's so much energy that gets put towards the diets, and then move it towards building a life that really is more satisfying, nurturing, appealing, and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we realize just how much energy we
Yes,
put into it. I
yes,
personally, with myself, never realized how much energy until I was no longer doing that. And it
exactly.
was like thinking back, it's like, oh my gosh, it consumed my thoughts
Hmm.
morning, noon, and night,
Hmm.
whether it be thoughts about my body, thoughts about how I should be going to the gym, and then
Hmm.
feeling guilty about it because I wasn't, thoughts about what I was eating, what I'd be eating next, what I should have eaten. Like
Yeah.
a ton of brain space was taken up.
And we think
Um,
it's normal. We think that's what we're supposed to be doing, and we're just doing a really bad job, which
yes,
is insanity. But yeah.
I know. And I worked full time in a hair salon for almost 10 years. So the back room was like constant diet chatter.
Hmm.
And there was never a time where somebody wasn't on a diet or trying to be good, trying to eat well, and then looking over your shoulder like, oh, what are you eating? Or
Yes.
maybe you shouldn't be eating that. And it's like, oh my gosh. Or again, the whole like, well, they're going to the gym after work. I should be too.
Hmm.
And you really don't realize it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you think it's normal. And what I have been finding with speaking to women and working with clients is this whole idea of never dieting again and actually being comfortable with your body right now, not 20
Hmm.
pounds from now, but right now is so radical that
Hmm.
they have a hard time even like grasping it at first. Like, well, what do
Yes.
you mean? What do you mean you're not going to help me lose weight? Or what do you mean I don't need to lose weight to be healthy? Like, so radical
Yes.
that it just goes to show how deep these messages from diet culture are ingrained in us,
Absolutely.
starting so early.
Yes, definitely. And
Yeah.
I'll admit, I even resisted big time when I first heard about the concept of intuitive eating. And I identified with all the thought patterns that were going on. And I knew that I found something very profound and meaningful. And then when I heard what the plan was to stop dieting and things like that, I was like, oh, whoa, 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 that's just going a little too far. I can't.
Right
And it took me
now,
a little time to come around. Yeah.
can you explain to those who may not be familiar with the concept of intuitive eating just a
Hmm.
quick rundown of basically what it entails and what the outcome is?
Okay. So, yeah, basically, intuitive eating is about really learning how to listen to your own body and make your own decisions when it comes to what you're going to eat, how you're going to move. So, it's giving up the rules, it's learning how to recognize diet mentality for what it is. Um, it's both letting go of the external rules and really going within to figure out how does this food make me feel? Do I enjoy eating this food? Does this food give me energy and make me feel nourished? So it's all about satisfaction and it's about pleasure. Um, it's still paying attention to your food. A lot of people think intuitive eating means never, worrying, thinking, caring about what you're eating in a giant free for all. And that's actually true in the beginning because so many of us need to disconnect from the rules. And sometimes the best way to do that is like ripping a Band-Aid off and just stopping the rules, sort of cold turkey. Um,
Mhm.
but eventually we want to listen to our bodies and hear what they're telling us as far as what we want to eat. And everybody is different. So we're
Mhm.
all going to like different things. We're all going to feel stronger eating different foods. So it's really learning how to tune into that and stop having our mind just pick these plans from a book and say, that's what I should do because this book tells me I should do it.
Mhm. And I think like when you say, every body is different, it's one of the things that like makes us so unique and amazing is how different we all are.
Right.
Yet when it comes to diets, I think we tend to forget that. Like
Mm-hmm.
our bodies are extremely complex with all of these different things moving, that no two bodies are the same, meaning no one diet is going to work for everybody.
Right.
And when we say work, it's like,
Right.
what
Yeah.
does that even mean
Yeah.
for it to work? Does that mean you're losing weight or does that mean you're actually physically feeling good?
Right.
I
Right.
know for me when the mindset switch went from desiring to feel good as opposed to looking a certain way or losing weight, that's when everything started shifting and making more sense and made it almost like, well, no, wait, I don't want to follow all these rules because I don't feel good following
Mm-hmm.
these rules, but I never thought about it before
Mm-hmm.
because the idea of a diet working meant I was going to lose weight, plain and simple, cut and dry. If I didn't lose weight, it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, I think people forget that our health is built on a lot more than just our physical bodies as well. It's, based on our emotional health and our spiritual health, our mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
we kind of throw all that out the window and think the physical is the only thing. And then we throw all of our energy into manipulating, changing, and trying to control that
Mm-hmm.
without giving time to those other parts that really need to be developed. And that was part of my story is I hadn't developed any of those parts. So I didn't even know that I was lacking because I was so focused on the food body
Mm-hmm.
aspect. So,
And I think something we can really see happening right now in this current climate and crisis that we're in is just how important all of those other aspects are,
mm-hmm,
like our mental health and our spiritual well-being,
mm-hmm,
how that is going to have a far greater impact on how we make it out of this situation that the world finds itself in,
mm-hmm.
far more than if you find yourself eating more cookies because you're stuck at home. Like the whole quarantine 15 that I keep seeing
Oh,
everywhere, that's
geez, I
driving
hadn't
me
heard that.
crazy.
Oh,
Oh, it's
ooh,
yes.
I
Oh,
heard that.
yeah.
Yeah.
There is just
Mm-hmm,
like a slew of memes and things like that, making jokes, making fat jokes,
mm-hmm.
basically, because society
And
has made that the ultimate insult.
And what that means is that those people are not aware of how their bodies need fuel enough to make those decisions to be attuned to what they need when they're in quarantine versus when they're not in
Mhm.
quarantine. I mean,
Yeah.
it just to me it's not you know, it just shows that development hasn't happened,
Hmm.
that attunement. So,
Yeah. And it's so important right now
mhm,
more than ever. Although it can seem overwhelming, of course,
absolutely,
to
absolutely.
anybody. And on top of everything else that's going on, it can just be this huge stressor. Really,
Hmm.
I mean, food is a stressor, even though it's meant to calm us. Sometimes it ends up being a stressor, and I think that's what people are finding themselves in right now,
Hmm.
being in quarantine and being home and being faced with all of these um, demons, so to speak.
Hmm.
Like, what are they going to do? And they're so afraid that, oh my gosh, I'm going to gain weight
Hmm.
while this is happening, and losing sight of the time that they have to work on all of the other aspects,
Hmm.
like their mental well-being and spiritual well-being. And again, once until you're actually aware that that stuff is missing,
Hmm.
it's hard to even see. So for you, what would you say was your biggest takeaway when you basically stopped dieting and ditched diet? Like, what was your biggest life-changing, oh my gosh, I've been missing out on this?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was just that realization that it's not about the food. And that every
Mm-hmm.
time I want to go down the road of micromanaging my food, that's an indication that something else is up for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an indication that I'm trying to control something. And it makes perfect sense. It's actually quite a brilliant strategy. Our bodies are saying, we're going to help you through this. We'll dive in and make a plan, and so it's trying to help us, but at the end of the day, it ends up limiting us. So the thing that we thought was going to help us learn how to control things ends up being the thing that's controlling us. So for me, just recognizing it's not about the food and recognizing what is the intention behind the choices that I'm making. That was huge too. So if
Mm-hmm.
my intention is coming from a fear-based place of lack and control, then it's not going to serve me, whatever decisions I'm making in that moment. Whereas if my decisions are coming from pleasure, joy, and love, then those are going to lead me in the direction I want to go overall. So I find that a lot of the skills that I learned in giving up dieting and a lot of the work that I've done over the last years, developing my emotional intelligence and my spiritual health, those are the things that are now helping me in this moment go forward with this current situation, because many of the elements of this are the same in having a lack of control and facing an unknown and being able to be flexible, and being able to tap into a lot of compassion,
Mm-hmm.
and having gratitude for the things that are going well. And so a lot of that, I have been working on and developed through the giving up dieting process. So to me, it's a fascinating parallel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the lack of control, I
Mm,
feel like is a really big driving force in dieting.
mm-hmm.
And right now, again, like we feel more out of control than ever.
Mm-hmm.
So how does somebody manage that feeling where like they're home, they're out of control, their routine, their life, everything feels so out of control. And the one thing they have always felt like they can control is food when that happens.
Right.
But when we try to focus too much on controlling food, what ends up happening is the exact opposite,
Right.
right?
Right.
You end up thinking about it 24/7. And if you're thinking about it 24/7, it has control over you.
Right. Right. Or we go down that restrictive path and we
Mm-hmm.
try to control it, and then we end up eating everything in the cupboard, a couple hours later, because the natural repercussion of trying to control and restrict is to go out of control. That's just human
Mm-hmm.
nature. It's going to happen.
Right?
It's like a
To
rubber
rebel.
band. Yeah. And so, and then we double down and we think, oh, no, 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 I just need to get stricter. I need to get more control. All the shoulds come up and we try to
Mhm.
tamp down even harder. And that just ends up, again, rebounding in some way. So, I mean, one of the best things we can do is just try to be okay with whatever is happening in the moment. So even if it's a feeling like we want to control or a feeling like we want to be out of control. Like I know some people are struggling with wanting to eat all the time in this situation, and some people are feeling like they want to control it because that makes them feel more in control overall. And
Mhm.
and mostly it's okay. Like whatever reaction you're having is okay, because
Mhm.
this is, as we know, this is unprecedented.
Yeah.
And if these things haven't come up for you before, they're going to come up now. So it's
Mhm.
okay, whichever way you're feeling drawn. So the first thing we want to do is just not make anything that we do wrong, you
Yes.
know?
And I think that's the first thing so many women do,
Mm-hmm.
make themselves wrong for
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
They were bad, they ate this, they shouldn't have eaten this. And again, especially at a time like this, like I think the biggest takeaway you can get from this is it's okay. Whatever you are doing right now is okay. None of us knows like
Mhm.
how to navigate this. Like we're learning as we go, taking it hour by hour, day by day.
Mhm.
And there might be a day like you want to eat everything in sight. That's okay.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
it's not going to be the derailing of anything.
Right.
I know I've heard from people that, oh, before this, I was doing so well. I
Mhm.
was exercising a lot. I had just gotten into the groove. I was eating well. And all of a sudden, it shot to hell. And I'm going to ruin all of the work I've done. And again, making themselves wrong for it.
Right. Right. And that's just an indication that some of what was happening before didn't have much flexibility in it. And when
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have flexibility, then you're going to run into a problem sometime, whether it's something like this, which totally unexpected, or
Yeah.
anything else unexpected, an injury, an illness in the family. There's always going to be something because life is always changing and life is always throwing stuff at us. So
Mm-hmm.
if our routine can only be okay in a very guarded set of circumstances, then that's going to add more fear because you're always going to be trying to control that routine and those circumstances. And that's the invitation, is how can I let go of some of that and open up so that I feel like I have choice and I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
have flexibility, and then I'm able to take it moment by moment and choose what's going to make me feel better in each moment,
Yeah.
instead of feeling like I have to follow this certain plan or else.
I know
So,
it's the or else and the all or
yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
The all or
exactly.
nothing. I know
Exactly.
in your latest blog post that I read, something that stood out was the allowing the idea that maybe life can look a little different and it still be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think when talking about being flexible and being able to um, move with life and the tides and how it rolls is a really important step to really minimize your stress.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
when you are so rigid and so like routine and thinking it's all or nothing, like you are setting yourself up to be stressed out when things
Absolutely.
don't go your way and when things pop up. And it's even when things like that are positive. Like how many times in the past would you have said, you know, okay, I'm following this meal plan. I'm doing great. I've been going to the gym. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, dinner out with friends, birthday party. Oh, somebody invited me to happy hour. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, either I can't do it because I've been doing so well, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it and then forget it. I'm off the wagon and I'll do better next week.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Absolutely.
being flexible, like all those beautiful things in life that come
Mm-hmm.
up
Mm-hmm.
that you should be enjoying and that should bring you joy and not bring you this feeling of failure or I was wrong
Mm-hmm.
or I can't
Absolutely.
do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and. So
Mm-hmm.
if you already have a certain flexibility in your eating, you know that when you go out and do those events and have fun, that you're going to be okay, because maybe you'll eat some of the food, maybe you won't. But
Mm-hmm.
either way, it's going to be okay. You won't feel that I must eat all the food, because you won't have that backlash, because you've already allowed yourself some flexibility. So even though the flexibility is what some people find a little scary, it's the thing that allows you to go into all of these situations and really tune into how you're feeling in the moment. Maybe one day you're super hungry and you do eat a lot of the food when you go out, and maybe another day you're not. I mean, it's every day is different. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so we need to ebb and flow with that, and our bodies know how to ebb and flow with it a lot, and when we trust them to guide us,
Mm-hmm.
that's the ideal.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier in the conversation about how people think intuitive eating means like it's just a free for all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like you can just eat everything and oh my God, well, now I'm not going to be healthy. That must mean like you don't have health in mind and whatnot. But the idea of allowing all foods
Mm-hmm.
is so scary to
Mm-hmm.
so many women.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get past that fear to take that first step in allowing all foods?
And that's a great question. There is an awesome book. Have you read The Fuck It Diet? Pardon my language.
One of my favorites, and I recommend it to all of my clients.
Okay, yeah. So it's a great book. And
Yeah.
she really dives into the permission, like no matter what, permission, 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 permission. And I 100% agree with that. But I also think it's important to note that if you have been using food and trying to control your food for a very long time, like I was a chronic dieter, which means I was on a diet for, a good part of 30 years. So full permission to eat was both exciting and terrifying. And I ripped off the Band-Aid and I jumped into it full force, but I didn't realize some of the nuance underneath it, meaning I didn't realize how much I might have been using food to regulate my emotions, or how much I was relying on just the physical and not the emotional, spiritual, whatever. So I would say, if you're going to take the step to go into giving yourself full permission, also work on the compassion for yourself at the same time, because that's huge. And if you at least can meet yourself with compassion, it's going to be a wild ride. I mean, there'll be days that are up and down, and some days you feel like it's feeling exactly the way you want it to feel, and other days it's not. And that's okay, because it's a healing process. But I didn't start with that compassion, so I judged the whole process, and I would say that just makes it more painful and draws it out a little long. So
yeah,
I would do what you can to try to add that piece in at the same time as you're giving yourself the permission to go forward. And you can go as fast or as slow as feels good to you. So don't judge that either. So maybe you want to start with one food in particular and try to give yourself more allowance and permission around that. It doesn't necessarily have to be all the foods or you're doing it wrong. So there's absolutely no wrong way to do it.
And I think that's a really important thing to remember, because at the end of the day, bottom line, one of the main goals of wanting to get off diets is to take your power back and to have control again, like actual real control over how you're feeling. So when you can do what feels good and take it at your own pace and understand that, okay, well, maybe all of the foods all at once isn't going to work for me. That is key in reaching the ultimate goal, which is getting your power back. Now, I don't think there's necessarily like a destination. Like you don't hit it and then you never have to work on it again and it's there. Like it is a journey.
Right.
But one of the biggest benefits of that journey is that power and freedom that you gain. So
Absolutely.
Wrapping your head around, no, I'm in control and I get to choose like what really feels good to me right now. There is no wrong way to do it. I am not wrong. It does not, just because my journey doesn't look like somebody else's, that's okay. And that I think requires a lot of the unlearning of the diet mentality when you're used to constantly comparing. Like I used to go to Weight Watchers. That was my okay, I need to rein it in. We're going to go back to Weight Watchers. And me and a few of my friends would always go back. So it's like a vacation coming up, a wedding coming up. This is what we need to do. And what do? You compare, well, I only lost 0.5. She lost 3. Why? That's not fair. We did the same things. We ate the same, and it just totally first messes with your head.
Absolutely.
And takes you completely out of yourself and your body, and you lose all of the trust for yourself.
Absolutely.
Which is something that we need desperately to find that trust within ourselves, to recognize and understand that everything we ever have needed is already within us.
Absolutely.
And that's a big one I realized on my own journey when I finally was like, oh my gosh, I'm not on a diet. And I'm not thinking about being on one. Like I'm actually trusting that I know what's best for me and that my body is going to let me know. It was a very whoa.
Right.
Mind-blowing moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and with that flexibility, it also gives you the ability to change course when things aren't feeling good. So, maybe you head down one path and that doesn't feel good either. So, okay, let's pivot and go down this path. And by path, I mean, maybe you find you're not doing as much movement as you would like, and it doesn't feel good. Okay, let's feel into that, but from a place of compassion and flexibility and listening to the body instead of the mind saying you need to go do this or else.
Right. You need to do, 50 push-ups, or you
Absolutely.
are failing this workout or failing the whole plan.
Right.
Gosh, I used to go to the gym all the time and like tell myself that I liked it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
not fun. I didn't enjoy it. It was a
And that's
punishment.
right. And how many times, even now, I find myself knowing what I know, I'll still go do some form of activity. And there's like a time in my head that I feel like I need to do it
Yes.
or else it doesn't count. Like,
It doesn't,
what does
right? I know if I didn't have at least 60 minutes
that?
to go to the gym, like to actually be working out, then I wouldn't bother
Right.
because it wouldn't count. Or I was so resistant to trying yoga.
Okay.
Like so resistant because I'm like, that's not going to get my heart rate up.
Right.
That's not going to make me sweat. It's not like high intensity enough. So what is the point? Why am I going to waste my time?
Right.
Not burning enough calories. I'd had like the thing that like went around my rib cage to count my heartbeat and the calories I was burning, and I'd be looking at the watch.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. That is not trusting your body at all. Yeah. It's completely giving it up to the measures out externally. So yeah. And just to cycle back just for a second, and what you were saying about not comparing, that is huge. Like if there's one thing you can stop doing, that is enormous, because it does drain our energy so much. And there's so much unknown in other people's process. So you might look at them and draw a conclusion, but your conclusion is completely based on assumptions or interpretations of a different situation. So it's always going to get you in more trouble. And it's never beneficial to go down that road. So
no, yeah. And it's like, bottom line, what is it getting you by comparing?
Exactly.
Is it making you feel at peace and at ease in your body and celebrating and good about yourself, or is it making you feel like crap?
Right.
And how do you want to feel?
Right. Exactly. And you get to choose.
You get to choose. Huge thing, I think, for women to remember. You get to choose.
Always get to choose. There's
Like,
always a choice.
Always a choice, even if it feels hard, even if it doesn't feel natural. Like even thinking about changing our inner dialogue and shifting from this very, negative self-talk. You get to choose that inner dialogue. It might not feel like it because you're kind of on autopilot.
Right.
But you get to choose that. And once you make that conscious decision and you're aware that, wow, I do get to choose, that's when you can start like stopping those thoughts dead in their tracks and be like, okay, I have a choice right now. Do I want to continue down this path or do I want to shift my thoughts to something more positive? And what I find like my favorite thing about the body is how the brain, you can like retrain it and mold
100%.
it.
Yeah.
And direct your thoughts. So these thoughts that once seemed unnatural, these thoughts of like, wow, I'm amazing, I love myself, become your natural and your default. And that's when you really start to notice the shift in your outlook on everything.
Yeah.
I think. But it takes that choice and that awareness
for
any of that to happen. But bottom line is we have the choice.
Exactly. And so the awareness is huge because it's recognizing that we've been programmed to think a certain way, whether it's through our conditioning with our culture, our families, our, teachers, parents, whoever, and recognizing that that is purely just conditioning. And it's not real. It's not the truth, because we can change how we want to feel. And then, like you said, the brain is amazing. We can change those neural pathways and rewire it to a message that is way more uplifting and sustaining. So
yeah, and thinking about how we are conditioned to
Mhm.
feel this way about our bodies,
Mhm.
to have this negative self-talk. I think about my daughter,
Mhm.
she'll be 4 in
Mhm.
a couple, well, 2 months. She has none of the body shame, body hate. Like, she will run around naked.
Mhm.
She says to me the other day, she's like, "Mommy, look at my booty butt. I love it." And I'm like, "You go, girl. Yes, you love it." But
Absolutely.
that shows we are not born
Mhm.
with this hate for our bodies, or with this disconnect, or with this feeling that we need to fix ourselves, or that something's wrong.
Mhm.
And I see it every day with my daughter, who she does not care. And like, she changed her outfit. I don't know. In quarantine, we're like, she's changing her clothes 12 times a day. And I don't care if it's keeping you occupied. But like,
Mhm.
she wears whatever she wants. And I always tell her whatever feels good. But she has no concept of anything being wrong with her body.
Mhm.
And now I'm doing my best
Mhm.
to hope it stays that way. But I know very well that the societal pressure and the conditioning from outside sources is really going to still play a part.
Yeah.
Um, which is why I'm also so, even if you're not a mom, even if you don't have daughters, if you're a woman, it is your job
Mhm.
to start working on this yourself. So as a collective, we change the dialogue around women's bodies, and we change how little girls like my daughter are growing up to view themselves, because it is a learned response, or a learned thought process to think something's wrong with you. And if we
Absolutely.
could just channel our 3-year-old selves
Mhm.
who didn't have a care in the world
Mhm.
about what their body looked like
Right.
that's what we want to get back to. And we can.
Right.
That's like the beautiful part of it being a learned response, and it being conditioning. We can unlearn all of it.
Right. And to add to that, they knew how to eat. A child comes into the
Yes.
world knowing when they're hungry, knowing when they're full, knowing that one day they might want to eat an entire plate of chicken and the next day they might want to only eat an apple. I mean, they know these things. Or one day it's ice cream and the next day it's broccoli. They know these things. And when
Mm-hmm.
we let them feel it, experience it, sense it, I actually had an interesting experience in that my children were older when I came to this knowledge. So they'd already experienced the dieting world and the
Mm-hmm.
control and you may have one cookie and you may not have any more and you cannot have this. And we're throwing all of these out and give me your Halloween candy and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized how it was affecting them, and we shifted how we approach things. And there was that time where maybe you put down a plate of cookies and they ate the entire plate of cookies and you sat there wondering, maybe they don't know, maybe they can't trust. But gradually they learned like, oh, I ate that plate of cookies and wow, I had the worst stomach ache ever. So maybe
Yeah.
next time I'll eat half the plate of cookies. And it was amazing to see them come to it in their own time, what
Mm-hmm.
made them feel good and what didn't. And they all have different bodies and they all have different tastes and they all have different preferences, and they're all going to be
Mm-hmm.
different sizes. They're your own unique people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was really fascinating to sort of see that happen. And so now, maybe I'll see them eat ice cream at a time when I normally would be like, oh, maybe ice cream isn't great right now. But they intuitively know. And then, the next day, again, it's like all apples or something. My daughter will come in and be like, I just need something fresh. And she's 13, but she's been
Yeah.
allowed to, both have both foods and have both foods be okay. So one doesn't have any more value over another. It's just, what is she feeling like in that moment? Um,
Yeah.
that's
I'm not
cool.
gonna lie. It's been a real struggle for me with my daughter,
Hmm.
navigating this and trying to figure out, like, all right, but like with the cookies, do I let her eat cookie? Like, she will keep asking for them.
Yeah.
And I usually say, no, we're just gonna have one. And I don't know how to truly like let the reins out. Although, like with dinner last night, she ate plain noodles, like
Mhm.
straight up nothing on them. That's what she likes. I try to keep my opinion about it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, that's what you want to eat?
Mm-hmm.
But it is so hard because I find myself, I know it's a power struggle with both of us.
Yeah.
She wants to be in control of it. And
Mm-hmm.
while I'm not like full blown controlling everything, I still feel like I need to be like, well, no, that's enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, or, well, no, we're not gonna eat that if you didn't even eat your dinner, because she'll take one bite of dinner, say, oh, I'm full from this. I want a snack.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm like, I can't let you live on snacks. Or can
Mm-hmm.
I? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah, yeah, and a great resource for this is Ellyn Satter, and it's Ellyn and Satter
I
Satter.
have to write that down.
And she's a fantastic resource for how to do this work with kids, because she calls it the division of responsibility, and the division of responsibility says, I'm going to put out the meals and I'm going to put out the food, and the child gets to decide what they want to eat and how much. So the whole point is to have a wide variety of foods and
Mhm.
then let them decide again what to eat and how much. That doesn't necessarily mean free for all during the day. They actually have it pretty structured where there is a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. So it's not entirely
Okay.
eating. Um, but when you put the breakfast out, you might have, some waffles and some fruit and an egg, or you might have a variety of things. And again, the child gets to choose what and how much. She
Hmm.
also has this thing where she recommends that when it comes to things like snacks, you always make a snack like at snack time. So for me, when I did this with my kids, it would be after school at about 3:30 or 4. And so some days it would be, apple and peanut butter. Some days it would be cheese and crackers. Some days it was a plate of chocolate chip cookies. Some days it was ice cream sundaes. Like it was always something,
Okay.
different. There was variety. But when I put it out, it was let them have as much as they want. And
Okay.
that's where they had to learn the lessons of, wow, when these cookies were delicious. And part of the reason the cookies were so delicious is because I'd been so restrictive in our past. So it was very
Hmm.
important to recognize that they weren't free-for-alling over the cookies because cookies are that good. They were doing it because they'd been restricted. So,
Yeah.
and a funny little story about that is, like, knowing we were going into quarantine, I bought some yodels the other day, just like
Hmm.
a fun food we hadn't tried in a very long time, if ever. I'm not sure if I've ever bought yodels. And like they taste it for themselves and they're like, yeah, not so good. Like
Right.
this is kind of not my favorite thing,
Hmm.
which is not to judge yodels, but they do know what foods taste and feel good to them.
Hmm.
And so back to the snacks and the cookies, that's one of the ways that you can let them learn how much is enough for them and how much is too much. And again, she doesn't necessarily recommend that you give them snacks all the time. So if it's, you want them to come to the table hungry when it's time for a meal, so you try to have that sort of that structure around the meals.
Hmm.
um, and then at dinner, it's the same kind of idea where you put out the dessert with all the other foods. And so sometimes
Okay.
they might eat their dessert first, but it's almost a little silly to say you have to eat all this other food before you eat your dessert when maybe they only want dessert that day. Um,
Hmm.
and so it is, and I think the thing that most parents come up with in their minds is the sense of health. Like, well, if my
Yes.
child only eats dessert every night, are they going to be healthy? And that's where, in learning to trust, they're not going to just eat dessert every night, because one day they're going to want the other foods too.
Hmm.
And it happens. Like if you notice it with little kids, they do gravitate towards the things that they want.
Hmm.
And that can be fruit, vegetables, all the different choices. So
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, like my daughter, when she first started eating like real food, I was like full blown, okay, I am focusing on my health and feeling good. I was eating like a fully plant-based diet because I was trying to heal my rheumatoid arthritis and that's what felt good. So she was naturally eating that too. And she ate everything I made. And I was making like some obscure stuff.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, she eats everything. This is fantastic. I'm doing the best job. I'm doing the right thing. And then slowly she got, I hate to say picky, but that's the only, I try not to say it to her, but that's the only way to describe it. She
Mhm.
started eating less and less and less and less to the point where now it's like, I can't get the girl to put a vegetable in her mouth. And I am, while trying to navigate it myself,
Mhm.
my husband, not that we're not fully on the same page. It's just he's trying to unlearn some stuff too. And he'll be
Mhm.
like, well,
Absolutely.
just take one more bite for me.
Mhm.
Or can you try it? Why aren't you trying it? And I try to say, like, the more we focus on it and try to tell her what to do, the more she's like, nope, ain't
Yes.
happening,
Yeah.
not doing it.
Mhm.
And we're currently living with my parents, and they have a whole very old school way to look at it. Like, eat your vegetables, or if she eats all of her food, good job. You did a
Mhm.
great job. And I'm like,
Right.
no, I don't think we're
Yeah.
supposed to be saying that,
Right.
but I don't really
Right.
know because I clearly have no idea what I'm doing with her.
Yeah.
It's like she's my guinea pig, but
Yeah.
just trying to find this, like, and with the snacking, like, you're asking me for a snack 25 times a day, and her thing is, like I said, she'll be like, I'm full from this.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'll be like, okay, what do you want now?
Mhm. Mhm.
And part of me not wanting to deal with the backlash of that, but I want it, whatever. Um, but yeah, it's just a very, like, I know she's fighting it. And I think she feels not just a power struggle with her and I, but
Mhm.
with me and the other influences of food in her life.
Yeah.
And even at school, the culture of, like, rewarding with food,
Mhm.
and rewarding with sweets and calling it treats and
Mhm.
putting all this stuff on a pedestal. And it's just so apparent to me now,
Yeah.
um, that it's like, okay, what do I do? How do I do this? Because I know something's off, something's not right, but it's not fighting, but getting everyone around to
Yes.
see it too. And it's hard. And it
Absolutely.
really highlights too how, as women,
Mhm.
why it's so hard for us to unlearn some of these things is because it literally starts the minute you're eating real food. Like,
Absolutely.
there becomes this control and, taking the control out of the child's hands when,
Right.
like you said, we're born knowing when
Right.
we're hungry. Like,
Right.
my 5-month-old knows when he's hungry
Right.
and knows when he's full.
Yeah.
And then we slowly just start taking that away. I mean, I was at a birthday party once, a kid's birthday party, and it was like, eat 5 more bites. And the poor kid was like, looked like she was gonna throw up. Like, she
Right.
wanna eat 5 more. And for what? Why do you want her to eat 5 more bites? So she
Right.
can eat cake? Like, I don't,
Right. It just
it
doesn't make
doesn't
sense.
make sense. But
Right.
here I am navigating it with my daughter, who she just wants chicken nuggets every day, which is one thing I swore I would never give her, but I think we
Yeah.
all have those parenting things.
Yeah.
And whatever, like, it's not like she's healthy, she's fine. She has a
And
whole life to learn to like vegetables, but
Ellen does go over the picky eating too. And that is some, like you said, it can be more a matter of control than it is about food.
mhm,
And a child trying to express their own autonomy over their decisions.
yeah.
Um, so that's a good, Ellen also has a website with lots of free resources and downloads and all kinds of, even
Mhm.
webinars. There's all sorts of information. So
I'm gonna put her name in the comments because I think I have
yeah.
quite a few mamas in the group that might
Yeah.
find this helpful too. I feel like
There's,
we could do a whole separate
yeah.
conversation on this.
There's another
Um,
book called Born to Eat as well. And
okay,
that's a good one too
born to eat.
for dealing with
Yeah,
younger kids.
trying.
Um,
So, like, if my daughter asks for a cookie,
mhm.
would I give her a plate of cookies more than
Well,
one?
some of it is again establishing the routine. So
Mm-hmm.
if you know that she wants to eat breakfast and then maybe a snack in the morning, a lunch, a snack in the afternoon, and dinner,
Mm-hmm.
you would pick one of those times to maybe do the cookies, like maybe the afternoon snack, where
Mm-hmm.
you would put out the plate and let her have what she wants. And you know, I would also go with your intuition on this. My kids were older and we were kind of ripping off the Band-Aid. And I had one child who it felt like the need to eat was very compulsive. So I really wanted to see what would happen if I didn't limit him and he could choose the limits. And again, that required me sitting back while he went overboard many times in order for him to learn I'm full and I don't want to eat any more of this, and to trust that if you want it again on another day, we'll have it again on another day. It's okay. Like you don't have all of it right now.
I know. I try to tell my daughter that, like, you'll have it again sometime. Don't worry. This is not like the last time, although in the current situation we're in, it feels weird even thinking that. But yeah, this is not the last time you're going to have it, and it's going to be okay. Because I mean, she wakes up, first thing she asks for is a snack, and lately it's been, can I have a cookie? I want a popsicle. Can I have an ice cream sundae? And I'm like, no, we don't eat that in the morning. And then I'm like, but why don't we? I don't know why we don't eat that in the morning.
Yeah. And so sometimes you can shake it up and have those foods offered at a morning snack or a lunch, or just to kind of be like, yeah, today this is what we're having. And it's not weird. We mostly want to get away from this idea that foods are good or bad, or there's only certain times for certain foods. I will admit that the times when, so my kids again are a little older, so when they go to reach for the ice cream for breakfast and I'm like, ice cream, they're like, Mom, it's what my body's telling me about right now. And I'm like, oh, like, all right, go for it. But they don't do that every day. So, you know, and even if they did that every day, then we would have conversations about, well, how did you feel then? Like, how did the rest of your day go? Like, did you have the energy you wanted, blah, blah, blah. Because generally they find maybe that'd be fun for a few days, but would we want to eat ice cream?
Gosh, maybe I should let my daughter do that. So then by the end of it, she'd be like, I just want some broccoli.
Exactly.
Like, I just need some broccoli or something. She used to tell people, like, she cracks me up. We were at this big, I don't know if you're into antiques, but Brimfield Antique Show.
Yep.
My husband sells there. So we were there over the summer, and she was 3. And we're sitting there talking to this young couple at lunch, like just making conversation. And she says something out of nowhere, like, oh, my favorite food is kale. And these people looked at me like, wow, you're doing such a great job. And I looked at them, I'm like, she's lying.
Yeah.
She's lying. She doesn't eat kale. Like, what? I don't even know what she's talking about.
Right. Well, and the people are just showing their morality around food. And you've done a good job if your child wants to eat a vegetable. Like, that has nothing to do with you. That's what they like. You know?
It is fascinating when you really start diving into food behaviors, especially with children.
Yes.
And it really highlights some of my own food things.
Absolutely.
When I see her, and I recognize, like, when I'm trying to be a little more controlling because I'm afraid. I said to my husband, before I think I was even pregnant, just at the whole idea of having kids, if we ever have kids, the one thing I'm not going to do is give them my messed up relationship with food. So I had this, I'm making decisions based on fear, which again is something else we see is not always what serves our best interest. Making these decisions based on this fear that I'm going to mess her up, or she's going to be unhealthy, or she's going to live a lifetime of dieting like I did.
Right.
When if I just trusted myself and trusted her, I think the power struggle and the control issue wouldn't be as strong.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I just came to a massive realization while having this conversation. Like, wait a minute. So maybe I should let her eat. Yeah. And just like go for it and see what happens and know that she's going to be okay.
Right.
I'm doing the best I can. Everybody's going to be okay. And making decisions based out of fear. Doesn't do anybody any good.
Right. And so we always have to kind of go beyond the decision to ask ourselves, like, why am I choosing that? Why am I saying that it has to look this way? What is my belief when I say that?
Yeah.
because that'll identify a lot of really interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
Like even with my kids, they are all in different size bodies. So I have to recognize sometimes I have the belief that if they ate differently, they might be in a different size body. But I've got two kids that eat very similarly and they're still in very different size bodies because bodies are different. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating when you kind of start to go beyond that moment when you want to make that decision and ask yourself kind of why am I making that decision and what do I believe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause
When you start asking yourself why,
mhm,
like even why are you eating, not what you're eating, that
right,
question of why opens you up to more curiosity and
right.
to being open to discovering new things or exploring things that you may not have had thought of before. Whereas when you're just focusing on the what, it doesn't give you that question, that desire to be curious.
Right.
And being curious again, like that's one of the biggest, the awareness and the curiosity is what's going to have you questioning all of the beliefs
Hmm.
that you have kept with you. A lot of them not even your own,
Right.
but that have just been like built into your subconscious your entire life. That's when you really start questioning these beliefs and determining which ones are serving you, which
Hmm.
ones aren't, and how you can cultivate more of the ones that are serving you. And we'll touch on one final thing, talking about cultivating beliefs.
Hmm.
From again, from that blog post that I read of yours, how do we cultivate the belief that we have that innate power within us to
Hmm.
heal and to regain the trust in ourselves?
Yeah, and I would say it's really the baby steps. It's really
Hmm.
so experiment. Set up a
Hmm.
small experiment and try something small and notice how you feel. So like with regard to the innate ability to heal, so I believe that, we can heal on multiple levels. Um, and what sort of a thought that started me on that path was just think of yourself when you have a cut on your arm. Do you do something to make that heal? No, it actually just does it all by itself. So once you just open the door to possibility, then you're like, well, how can I expand this idea into all
Hmm.
different arenas? And so with the food thing, it's the same thing. Like if we can identify one belief, and then we can ask ourselves, well, does that help me or hurt me? Is that holding me back or is that moving me forward? Is
Hmm.
this the way I want to feel? Then we can experiment with what it's like to change that one belief.
Hmm.
As we gain a little confidence and momentum, then we can explore some other beliefs and all of this without judgment. So it's
Yes.
it's okay to get to a belief where you're like, I'm not sure I can let go of this one right now. And
Hmm.
that's okay because again, it's your choice. So
Yes.
that's all right. But yeah,
I
I
was
would
going to
say
say,
baby steps and little experiments.
yeah, I was going to say that that's what opens you up to having that choice when you start questioning the beliefs. That's where the
Mhm,
choice comes in. Like, do I want to feel this way? Or
mhm.
do I want to try something different? Do I want to feel differently? So I love that too, baby steps. Take the overwhelm out of it, like, and trust again that your journey is going to play out exactly how it needs to, and it's not going to look like somebody else's. And just make that decision to start to get curious
Yeah.
and to take those baby steps and open yourself up to being curious and questioning things. So you
Yes.
can start, that's how you start crafting and creating a life that really feels good to you, and
Exactly.
how unlearning a lot of this diet mentality and overcoming some of the body image struggles really opens you up to so many more things in life in general. Like it
Mhm.
transcends life.
It
Like
does.
it's not okay, well, I figured this out and that's it. No, it will change your entire life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I often say that it's the doorway. Like when someone comes to me to work on a food issue, we're going to
Hmm.
start there, but I know we're going to go somewhere else that's much richer and has much more potential because that's where the food thing came from.
And far
So,
more interesting than talking about food.
far more interesting.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And one little thing I just want to add as far as the kid thing goes, because I want to make this point. There are some children, as we know, who are not in touch with some of their body's signals.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with the term interoceptive awareness, but
Mm-mm.
that is knowing what our body is telling us with regard to hunger and fullness. And some
Mhm.
kids, either on the spectrum or with some cognitive issues, are not always able to tap in. So
Okay.
you would not want to go full blown intuitive eating with someone who has absolutely no idea what's happening in their body. And that's true
Mhm.
for adults too. And so that's
Mhm.
another, if you have an adult who's completely disconnected from their body and they have always lived in their head, which a lot of dieters do, you want to make sure you also bring some awareness to the body and be working on that at the same time. Otherwise, you won't know hunger and fullness. And you'll think this whole intuitive eating thing you won't even understand how it could
Yeah.
work.
It'll just be another diet that you failed.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
frustrating. So
Yeah.
just want to touch on that. So,
Yes, I love
yeah.
that. That's great. Yeah, it's about just being in tune with
Yeah.
your body. And as a parent, you have to be in tune with your child's body to some degree as well, because
Yeah.
they're still figuring it all out.
Yeah,
It
and
all
let them
out
have
too.
their body. Let them have their
Mhm.
body. I actually have a blog post out there called what I'd want people to know about their child's weight, because your child is your child and their body is their body and it's going to be what it's going to be. And
Mhm.
as much as we think we need to control it or manipulate it the way we used to control our own, no, they have their own bodies.
I'm going to share that in the comments too, a link to that blog post, because I think that will be a very helpful resource for a lot of moms, including
Yeah.
myself. I'm going to read it as soon as we're
Yeah.
done with this. But this was
Awesome.
fantastic. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for
Um,
having me. This was fun.
yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, it's always nice to be in person with things too, but now with the obviously online world exploding and having the opportunity to do this and reach more people and have these conversations that may not have been had
Right, right.
without this.
Yeah,
So thank you. I
absolutely.
appreciate you. Thank you for
Sure.
coming on. And if anybody has any questions, none popped up while we were talking, but feel free to pop them in the comments. And I'm going to put some of these resources that we talked about right in the links. And yes, thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Now let's see. I'm probably still on, but let me figure out how to turn this off.